office at Palm Beach County, and we are a good election office, and I have a great team. I think that we just got stuck with some mechanical issues that were inherited.
They may have given it everything they got, but in the end, Palm Beach unable to beat the clock with its election results. So the Board of Election Supervisor, Susan Booker, is saying she now expects a hand recount to begin. That will be on schedule. She'll be testifying later this hour before Judge Mark Walker. He's the same judge who just called the state the laughingstock of the world. This is your world, and welcome to it. I'm Neil Cavuto. More on the legal fallout from all of that in just a moment. First, Fox team coverage with Peter Ducey in Broward County on the final vote going on there, and the count still goes on there. And Phil Keating on Palm Beach, still very much up in the air. We begin with Phil. Phil.
Hi, Neil. Good afternoon. The counting room and recounting room here in Palm Beach County, as you can see right now, is devoid of people. The machine recounting has stopped, and unless that federal judge this hour rules in favor of a Democratic House candidate who has petitioned to eliminate the deadline for Palm Beach County just so that this county can finish recounting all the races, which could take another 3 or 5 days. If that doesn't happen, then the recount is over. And as far as Palm Beach County's numbers go that they just submitted to the Secretary of State, those are from last week, the ones they submitted on Saturday. So actually not recounted numbers that went from Palm Beach County, which could be the only county in the state that's still not official yet that failed to meet that 3 o'clock deadline. Now on these tables that are now set up, you can see all the papers out there. What's going to be next here is going to be the hand recount ordered by the Secretary of State if all of the numbers stay as they did after the first round of counting. That is for the Florida Senate race, and here in Palm Beach County, Florida House District 89. They'll have 40 people at these tables, papers in front of them, and pens. On those pages, they will have to go through all of the undervotes and the overvotes. So these are ballots where somebody filled out all the bubbles or connected the arrows on the ballot form, but in one race they didn't do that. So that's an undervote. So they will then go through the people here and see whether there was any kind of marking on the ballot to indicate who they chose, and then they would decide, okay, we think that was actually an intentional vote, even though the machine didn't notice it. The overvotes are where somebody actually voted for more than one candidate, so they'll be looking at those as well. So the number of ballots that would be recounted by hand for the Senate race and the local House race here in Palm Beach County, substantially, significantly smaller than the total number of county ballots from Election Day that were just recounted here until 2 nights ago when their old and outdated machines broke down. Also, 4 o'clock, Tallahassee, the race between Jim Bonfiglio, he is the Democrat, and his Republican opponent, Mike Caruso, that is separated, the total, by just 37 votes. Obviously, that's going to be within the hand recount margin. So everybody's on hold to see what the federal judge decides at the hearing, which is happening right now in Tallahassee, whether Palm Beach County alone will get an extension to finish the recount, or whether it's over for all the state, for all the counties, and now we move on to the hand recounts. All right, Neil?
All right, so there would be a hand recount in those 3 races for governor, for senator, for agricultural commissioner. Again, regardless of what happens here, whether they make an extension for Palm Beach, right?
Correct. Without a doubt, these numbers aren't going to change enough, most likely, to disavow any expected hand recount. So that's going to happen. Whether anybody else can get involved in Tallahassee and persuade this judge to allow Palm Beach County to finally get back to work and recount in here, we'll see this hour most likely.
Okay, Phil, thank you very much. Phil Keating. Now to Peter Ducey in Broward County, which just did make today's 3 p.m. deadline. That surprised a lot of folks, I guess, huh, Peter?
As to why the numbers are down. Very early today. Neil, this is the county, Broward, where officials were still finding boxes of ballots or loose ballots days after the election. But today, they did submit those election results to the Secretary of State a few minutes ahead of the 3 p.m. deadline. The results, as they read them out to us a few minutes later, show that between Election Day and the recount, Rick Scott lost 606 votes, but Bill Nelson lost more than 1,300 100. And Brenda Snipes, the election supervisor, did come out to say that not every vote was included in the total. There were a few dozen included in a batch that had some duplicates, but they couldn't figure out which ones were duplicates, so they went ahead and submitted them all to avoid having any voters feel disenfranchised. That is a big concern in the court system today, too. Judge Mark Walker has issued a few big rulings today, some celebrated by one side, some celebrated by the other, after initially giving Florida voters whose ballots have been flagged as having issues with signatures till Saturday night to fix them. Judge Walker then ruled that a Democratic motion to blow out the 3 p.m. deadline today was not going to fly because nobody told him how much he should extend it by. There are also some new questions this afternoon about Judge Walker and whether or not he might want to recuse himself, Neil, because some recently located FEC data has emerged to show that his wife has, in the past, donated to some of Bill Nelson's campaigns. Neil.
All right, but just to be clear, in the recounting they were doing there, or just adding up the numbers, Rick Scott extended his lead. Did I hear that right? I mean, or clarify that.
Well, here in Broward County, heavily Democratic, so
right.
Bill Nelson had more than 100,000 more votes than Rick Scott. He had more to lose here, but he did lose more than twice as many here in Broward as Rick Scott did.
All right, I'm sorry I wasn't clear, but just to be that in getting the final ballots here, did the numbers change? I know it's heavily Democratic. Of course, Nelson had a bigger lead there, a substantial lead. Did the final numbers then favor Rick Scott? In other words, Rick Scott had more votes than was earlier thought than the substantial votes that that Nelson already had.
So statewide, as the counties are still coming in, and we still have not heard officially from the Secretary of State in Tallahassee that a hand recount is about to start and at what time it's going to start. But the numbers that are coming in from all these different a couple dozen different machine recounts show that the Scott lead has extended a little bit, but less than 1,000 for now.
Got it. All right. And again, he's trying to overcome about a 14,000-point gap between himself, of course, and the senator. And now to the legal fallout from all of this, election law attorney Brian Silber. Brian, that is an important distinction because obviously in these counts, it's very important for the losing candidate to see if he can gain some ground, whether in the gubernatorial battle, the Senate battle, the agricultural commissioner battle. And then we have these 4,000 or so absentee and other ballots where they have to verify signatures. So I know there's going to be a hand count as well, but a lot of things have to go Senator Nelson's way, even if he got all of those ballots whose signatures are being checked. It wouldn't be enough to close the gap at this point.
Well, look, it's not a question right now of what will the ultimate outcome be. This is a question of process. And the whole idea is we want to make sure that the citizens of this country have their right to vote protected. And Florida law says when you have a race that is X amount of narrow margin, you have to do a mandatory recount. Right. Those are statutory safeguards. And where that lands us in the end, we'll know when we get there.
All right, well, I like that. But just to understand, when it gets to under 0.25% of the vote, then for the next step is a hand recount. Now, the hand recount
That's correct.
Gets into these issues of these ballots, where they were thrown out. Some of them were thrown out because the signatures didn't match or whatever. How do they handle something like that?
So the very first thing that you have to realize is in a manual recount, we are not counting every single ballot that was cast. That is not the situation. We are limited strictly to manually looking at those ballots that the machines cannot read. And the reason why they can't read them is because they're an overvote or an undervote. All that machine does is read penciled in ovals. That's it. It's a Scantron machine. So when it gets a check, a dot, something not registered, that's when a human has to come in and look at it. And that's the part that's going to be the manual recount.
Okay, so when Broward County officials seem to be indicating to us, for example, the Democratic County, that the sway in these numbers doesn't seem, and I know what you're saying about process, it's a very good point and a reminder, Ross, But a lot of people are looking, what will change in this process as it moves to the hand count and verifying signatures and all of that? But that they are saying, at least in their county, that the numbers have not starkly moved one way or the other. Then it gets to the hand recount. Assuming that doesn't change, the final numbers come in statewide by November 20th when all this has to be finalized, right?
That's correct. And in my experience, having handled a recount in the past, this summer, in fact, the electronic recount is almost perfect. When we redid it must have been about 250,000 votes, the numbers came back exact. They didn't even change by one single vote.
Wow.
The only time we saw a change was with the manual count.
All right. That's very, very interesting. I learned a lot talking to you. Brian Silber, election law attorney.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. What a confusing process.
Thank you.
All right. I want to dip in a little bit here. Can we take a little bit of this, guys? You're looking at Melania Trump. She's at this U.S. Institute of Peace on Constitution Avenue in D.C. The subject is family online safety to avoid online bullying. Let's listen in a bit.
I'm an undergraduate student at Harvard University. Something interesting about me and something that's really vital to the reason that I'm on this stage today is that I am a social entrepreneur, and I'm focused on making the internet a safer place for our children. So for me, my focus is creating digital solutions to try to stop cyberbullying before the damage is done. In my youth, I was bullied and cyberbullied. It had a profound impact on me. And I think that this is an initiative that is really important that we need to focus our attention on. So when I was 13 and read the story of Rebecca Sedgwick, an 11-year-old girl who took her own life after being cyberbullied, I decided that I didn't want to be a bystander. I wanted to be an upstander.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Judah?
My name is Judah. I'm 14 years old. I'm in the 8th grade. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And one interesting thing about me is that I don't have social media or a smartphone. I actually just got my very first flip phone. And it's been great. But that's the main thing about me and how I'm going to, stand up in this digital age, just preaching the message of, you don't really need all that to be included in friendships and be included in your school.
Thanks very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Woodrow. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And so for me, definitely growing up, I had an older brother, and so I was always a big gamer. And since I was like 7-year-old, I was always on the PC, that sort of thing. And so I definitely had some own personal experiences that kind of led me to be here today. And I'm just really excited to share the stage with all of you guys and just talk about these issues. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bronte Johnson. I'm 18 years old. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. And kind of like what Christina said, growing up, I've always been a really big gamer, PC games, Xbox, PlayStation, the whole 9 yards. And technology has always been a really big part of my life. So I'm happy to have served on the council and to continue to do stuff like this.
Well, fantastic, and nice to see you, some of you, and nice to meet you. I just want to know what inspired you in your community that you started with anti-bullying and social media.
So like I mentioned, when I was 10 or 11, I started receiving messages on my phone and on social media, and some of them targeted really basic things like my hair or my clothes, but some of them went as far to attack my family and to say really rude things about me, and just felt very alienated in my own community, in a place that was supposed to support me. And so for a very long time, I wanted to hide my voice. I didn't want to talk about what had happened to me. I wanted to forget it, like most victims of bullying and cyberbullying. But when I read the story of this young girl who took her own life after being cyberbullied for 1.5 years, and then I started to do more research and realize just how much of an impact this issue has on teenagers, I really realized that there was an impetus for action, and that as a teenager, as someone who had been through the experience myself, I had a unique perspective that I could bring to the table. And so that's really how I got started.
And then for me, actually my parents started an organization called Parents Who Fight.
All right, we're monitoring this Melania Trump event. This was a well-scheduled and telegraphed planned event on the part of the First Lady to address cyberbullying at a Family Online Safety Institute annual conference put on by the U.S. Institute of Peace in Washington, D.C. The First Lady's gotten a little more news lately. She was complaining about the Deputy National Security Advisor, Myra Rickardell. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She said that she was not really helping out. It put out a statement to that effect that she shouldn't be working in the White House, and now she's not. Ms. Rickardell has been resigned. But again, whether there is an opportunity here for the First Lady to take questions, we'll take you to that if and when it becomes possible. In the meantime, taking a look at the corner wall and Broadway, we had stocks down, or stocks up, I apologize, up better than 200 points. We were down for a good chunk of the day on growing concerns about what's happening in Britain. Brexit seems to be breaking apart right now, and everything was going south. That is certainly for the British pound versus the dollar, and even for the British markets earlier on as Theresa May tries to hang on to her prime ministership. But everything changed on a report that broke that the administration was very close to discussing the grounds of truce with the Chinese ahead of the G20 summit and what that could mean. And then everything just started to reverse because the understanding was that maybe they cobbled together the broad outline of a trade deal with the Chinese. Keep in mind the president is going to be meeting with President Xi Jinping of China for this summit. Let's go to Ashley Webster at the New York Stock Exchange. Talk about getting whipsawed on this stuff, huh?
You know, it's just a series of headlines, Neil, but I want to focus, if I can, on Brexit because we, for so much of the session, certainly through two-thirds of it, were dealing with all these headlines and the effort by the UK Prime Minister, Theresa May, to try and salvage and sell this withdrawal plan she's put together that nobody seems to like, including her own cabinet. As you can see, she spent some time on the floor of the Houses of Parliament today saying this is the best deal we can get. Maybe we can change it for the better down the road, but this is the best deal you're going to get. But people on both sides of the aisle say this is a terrible deal. Well, later on this afternoon, the UK Prime Minister held a press conference and addressed the country, and she basically said, look, this is the best deal. It's now up to the UK Parliament to approve it. Take a listen.
I'm going to do my job of bringing back the best deal for the United Kingdom. That will then be put before the House of Commons. It will be put before members of Parliament in a meaningful vote.
It is indeed a meaningful vote, Neil, because if it goes before Parliament probably next month and they vote it down, chaos ensues. The future of Theresa May would then be very much in doubt, and then there will be questions of whether there should be another vote. But bottom line, this Brexit deal, this divorce, has taken years to bring to fruition, and it's far from over. It's very messy indeed, and that does have an impact on the markets, Neil.
All right, well put, Ashley. Thank you very much, Ashley Webster. Again, we were down 200 points on that, and the idea that we were exposed to trouble, certainly in Britain and Europe, the club they want to bolt from here. But then we got that news out of China that they might cobble together the broad outlines of a truce. Whatever that means is anyone's guess. Let's get the read from Froma Chrysler and Home Depot CEO Bob Nardelli. Bob, good to see you.
Thank you, Neil. It's good to be with you.
All of a sudden, sellers became buyers on the notion that maybe we in China can settle our differences or at least walk toward a truce.
Yes.
That was a reminder, as if we needed it, that this China trade thing is still a big issue of concentration. Huh?
It's a big deal. And I couldn't be happier. You know, as I talk to a lot of my colleagues and CEOs, performance has really been very strong, as you've said many times, across corporate America. Great earnings, great growth, great return to the consumer. And it's these external events that are just crushing and really somewhat demoralizing to the men and women of these companies who are working their tails off for performance and return to shareholders. And then you get these outside events that really just take it down. So while we had the Brexit issue, you know, weighing on us heavily, I'm really encouraged with the, as you said, the breaking news about China. I think this will get resolved. I think Xi Jinping and President Trump are both going to come out winners. I mean, they're both going to have things that they can go back to their constituents and say, look, we've got a good deal here. You know, China has suffered the last couple of months, consumer spending, if you look at investments and different things. So,
in fact, they're slowing down, and that raised the concern about oil prices, which have been tumbling well into bear market territory now. Is it your view that the global economy is softening, that we should worry about that, or what do you think?
I think we have talked ourselves into that. You know, within 24 hours, we went from an undersupply to an oversupply of oil. Now, if you think about oil and the impact on gasoline and fuel, that's got to give us more discretionary spending. So I think that's going to help the economy. I think we got a lot of goes-ins and goes-outs, but I think overall we have a strong economy, a lot of concern with these external events. We've got the Fed rate. They're still talking about December. If you look at the PPI and the CPI, I don't think we have an inflation issue.
So wholesale inflation numbers that show it relatively contained,
yes,
inching up a little bit. But
and the same with the CPI. It's only, what, 2.2, 0.3%?
Right. You know, while I'm talking to you, we're getting some flashes in from regulators who are looking at easing up the pressure on lenders in the California area, bank lenders and the rest. The only reason why I mention is because the new Democratic majority coming into the House, led by Maxine Waters, is going to be taking over the House Financial Services Committee, has made it very clear we're not going to go slow on this easing back on regulations. What do you think of that in the battle to come here? Because there are two different views on this.
I think that would be really unfortunate if that is to occur. You saw
that if she gets her way.
That she gets her way. I think you just saw Warren Buffett put in a significant amount of money into the banks today, which is a real vote of confidence.
Specifically, J.P. Morgan Chase.
Yeah, with $4 billion.
So he's betting on banks.
Yeah. So if in fact they do slow this thing down, look, they've done a great job in passing the pressure checks that they've been posed from, you know, the 7, 8, and 9 crisis. I think the banks are much more under control. They're much more cognizant of the lending and the lending issues and a little more conservative. I think that would be a terrible, you know, impact. It's really going to put the brakes on what has been a very robust economic situation, Neil.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. As Bob was speaking, we're getting an urgent coming in concerning this Palm Beach County move to continue right now and give state authorities what they have from the ballots they tried to count. They didn't get them all counted. Well, now Senator Nelson's attorney, they're suing Palm Beach County and the Florida Secretary of State, saying they should first do that job before handing off any other job. They're ticked. The heat is on. They say they're going to sue now over this. We have sued Palm Beach County and the Florida Secretary of State to require a hand count of all ballots in the county due to systematic machine failure during the machine recount. And back and forth we go. Phil Keating in Riviera Beach, Florida. What does this mean now?
Well, the federal judge up in Tallahassee that has been handling all of these lawsuits filed by not only the Nelson campaign, the Governor Scott campaign, as well as some other groups, he's trying to assume them all. Actually, right now in Tallahassee, that judge is hearing arguments to allow Palm Beach County to actually resume the machine recount just for this county alone. Could take 3 or 5 more days to complete their recount. We'll see what the judge says in that. But as far as Senator Nelson goes, because the machines here Tuesday night broke down and they lost a day's worth of counting, and in the end, 3 o'clock this afternoon, Palm Beach County failed to meet the deadline to get the recount complete. So the original vote numbers from last week, which were submitted on Saturday to the Secretary of State, that's what Palm Beach County is now going to have to go with. Well, Nelson wants all of those ballots for the entire county here in Palm Beach to be hand recounted. And we'll see what the Secretary of State decides about that. I'm sure that will be heard in federal court by the same judge. Also, Senator Nelson took a couple of losses today. He was hoping that the deadline could be just eliminated and everybody could count until everybody got the recount completed. That was denied as well. So Senator Nelson, Governor Scott, a very tight race. So tight, it's only 0.14% of a difference with Scott in the lead. So everyone fully expects, and we're expecting an order from the Secretary of State in a minute, to order every county to now do a hand recount in those counties of the ballots, only the ballots that were undervotes or overvotes. And so the number of ballots they'll have to go through is dramatically different. The deadline for having that done will be on Sunday. So there will be a hand recount for the Senate race here, but Senator Nelson wants a machine recount of all of the ballots as well.
All right. Thank you, buddy, very, very much. And again, why that's important, of course, Broward County, heavily Democratic, and Senator Nelson Handley won the county. The oddity is, in the counting that they were getting, is there was nothing that narrowed that gap between Senator Nelson and Governor Scott statewide. And in fact, if anything, Governor Scott actually picked up some votes in this process. That was not expected. And obviously, that was a development that Democrats did not plan on. Palm Beach is a separate issue here, but the same really continues, that the numbers that the Democrats are hoping to pick up, or both on the gubernatorial battle and in the Senate battle, and even by extension into the agricultural commissioner's battle, where they're really narrow. All these races are narrow, again, within the quarter-point gap. The overall numbers not change. In other words, it would take a Herculean leap right now in both the governor and potentially the senatorial battles for the math to change. It's an issue, I'm sure, that came up at the White House today as the president was meeting with GOP leadership. John Roberts at the White House right now. Hey, John.
It's clearly something, Neil, that's been on the president's mind. There's no question about that. In fact, last weekend while he was in Paris, he had one eye on what was going on in Arizona. Wasn't particularly happy that it came out in favor of Kyrsten Sinema over Martha McSally. But the president also, with a number of other things on the agenda today, as he met with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senator John Thune, and Senator Richard Shelby. Among the things they talked about, the pending judicial nominations that the president wants to get through, as well as appropriations, including border security funding, wall funding, disaster relief funding, the farm bill, and prison reform. The judicial nominations jumped back up on the radar screen after Arizona Senator Jeff Flake complained about the appointment of Matt Whitaker as the interim attorney general, fearing that the Mueller investigation would be in some jeopardy as a result, and saying that he would vote against the president's judicial nominations until and unless the Senate took up legislation to protect the Mueller investigation. Listen to Flake here.
Nobody expected him to not just leapfrog over the deputy attorney general who is overseeing the probe now, but to take away his authority and give it to somebody who has not been confirmed by the Senate, who's expressed hostility toward the probe. I can't understand why we're not doing anything about that.
Well, the reason is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says while he knows how the president feels about the Mueller investigation, he doesn't believe that the president would jeopardize the Mueller investigation. Democrats, meanwhile, have called on Whitaker to recuse himself from overseeing the Mueller investigation. But after a meeting with Lindsey Graham today, the South Carolina senator said he sees no reason for Whitaker to do that. Listen here.
He believed he did not have a reason to recuse himself legally or factually. Nothing I've seen would require him to be recused. I think he's got the background and the judgment to fulfill this job.
The White House is in no hurry to replace Whitaker. Neil, he can be there under statute, they say, for at least 200 days. And they like him running the Justice Department on an interim basis. Neil?
All right. They're the ones who make the choice. All right. John Roberts, thank you very, very much. All right. The read from Democratic Senator Joe Manchin on all these cross currents. He carried his state, won comfortably. Now the question is, how does he get along with both parties after this? All right, we might not know for sure, at least the makeup of the House and the Senate, the official makeup of the House and the Senate, for maybe another week or longer. That's because some House races still haven't closed, even though it looks like Democrats are picking up more than earlier thought, at least 38 seats by this point. And in the Senate, the early gains that it looked like Republicans were getting have evaporated in a host of lawsuits and close races, particularly in the state of Florida, where it remains tight as a tick. Let's get the read on all of this from a guy who did win pretty comfortably, West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin. Republicans very much wanted that seat. They didn't get that seat. The senator with us now. Senator, do you call what happened a blue wave?
Well, Neil, I don't know about a blue wave, but there was short adjustment that happened. In West Virginia, we picked up some House races, the local House of Delegate races, picked up a couple of Senate seats, which would be unusual unless there was movement, and there definitely was. I won in a state where President Trump came in multiple times. He tried everything he could, in spite of me voting with him more than any Democrat in Washington.
Have you talked to him, Senator, since your electoral victory?
A couple of times.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
we're gonna have a lunch and everything. Here's the thing: he gave it his best shot, and I told him before he did it. I said, "You're not going to beat me, but I guess that they're pushing you the base is pushing you to go ahead after me. But you need Democrats like me to put my country before my party and want you to be successful, because if my president's successful, my country does well and my state does well. That's more important to me than any party affiliation. So with that being said, he needs Democrats like me who want to work and make things happen. And I'll try all I can. The race is behind us. It's over. They gave their best shot. They didn't win. And now we move on and do what we're supposed to do, work together and govern.
So let me ask you then, in retrospect, do you think that your support for Judge Kavanaugh to become Justice Kavanaugh was the big difference? Because some of your Democratic colleagues who lost, like in Indiana and Missouri, did not.
Well, first of all, Neil, I know it's hard to believe. People just, in this toxic atmosphere of politics, people have a hard time believing that people make decisions based on the facts. If I could have found one corroborating fact that Judge Kavanaugh was involved any way, shape, or form with Dr. Ford, I wouldn't have voted for him under any conditions. But when I saw the FBI report, the facts weren't there to justify anything different. I had a lot of progressives that left me and the Democratic base that left. A lot of them came back. I'm very thankful for that.
Well, how's your relationship with those Democratic colleagues now, sir?
Well, I think they know. I mean, when it comes to health care, people fighting for health care, pre-existing condition, that I'm going to be there fighting, because I think President Trump has a golden opportunity to fix health care in America. We have a bill laying on Mitch McConnell's desk that was worked out after John McCain voted not to repeal it. It's been there for about 15 months. It could be called, and truly, it could be a legacy for President Trump. It would be Trump Repair Care. We can fix this thing, and I'm hoping he takes that up, but I'm working with everybody.
All right, so let me, to that degree, sir, then Mitch McConnell just came out of this White House meeting with Republican leaders and the president, and he said he's optimistic that they have a way forward to fund, for example, the border wall. Would you support that?
Oh, I do. Not only would I support it, Neil, I supported, and along with a bipartisan group of Democrats and Republicans, in 2013, over $42 billion for border security, and that border security bill was written by Republicans, totally in support of it. The president could have a major immigration reform bill that works and gives him a legacy that no other president has ever had. Just adopt the 2013 bipartisan bill, and he can make that happen. And I think the Senate definitely would go along with him, and hopefully we could get the House. But, yeah, I'm supporting border security. It has to be done.
Real quickly, in Florida, you know the battle going back and forth, the lawsuits being exchanged, sir. Senator Bill Nelson, now the latest, to sue Palm Beach County for halting what was a machine recount. Now it's down to a handwritten vote recount. And they take all of them by hand and count them all for the state. None of these numbers have changed in this process for him. If anything, Rick Scott slightly widened his lead. Would you advise Bill Nelson to give up or let the process work its way?
I think the way their code is written down there, Neil, when the closeness of the race is close as it is, it's a mandatory recount.
You're absolutely right.
I could be wrong, but
no,
I think
you're right.
that's
And the hand count is next to that point. But
yeah.
With these lawsuits could push things back, is what I'm saying.
I would let the process. I mean, both sides are skeptical and everyone's paranoid. I understand that, but I think if the process is able to continue, the count the way it's mandated by their laws, and then decide from there if you think you need to go on with a legal pursuit or not.
You know, there are a number of ballots in question where the signatures don't match, Senator. I know this is outside your state, outside your area.
Sure.
You don't like to weigh in on other races, but it does come back to remind folks Florida, after all these years, can't get its act together. And I'm wondering, it's happened under, Republican leadership, Democratic leadership, in districts and counties controlled by Republicans and Democrats. So there's frustration that this could happen again. Are you worried for the 2020 presidential election we're going to see it play over yet again?
Well, they should be. Let me tell you one thing. All these national races are going to be extremely close. I was fortunate enough to be a governor of my state of West Virginia, and I enjoyed support from as many Republicans as I did Democrats. It was a wonderful time. But that doesn't happen in these national races because they believe that Washington captures us and changes it. Maybe it changes some, but it's not changing me. But with that being said, I think the National Secretary of State Association should basically put people and get its act together and help the states that have continuing troubles. Florida has had perpetual troubles, and they've been deciding in some, clear back to 2000, George W. Bush and Al Gore. And my goodness, you would think a national organization should be embarrassed enough to step in and try to help clean it up.
All right, Senator, thank you. Very good catching up. Congratulations again on your victory.
Thanks, Neil. It's always good to be with you.
Same here. As he was speaking here, we're getting some interesting corporate news here, at least one that has involved a titanic struggle between two gazillionaires, Carl Icahn, the takeover strategist, and Michael Dell, of course, of Dell Computer fame. Michael Dell is trying to take his company public. It went private, and Carl Icahn had essentially been questioning the wisdom of that move, launched a proxy battle against it. He's withdrawn litigation against Dell, terminated the proxy contest. So it would seem to be a victory for full speed ahead for Michael Dell, a company that he started in his dorm room making computers for some of his friends and buddies, and it grew a little bit, to go ahead and go back to being a publicly traded company.
Northern Plains, 17 degrees in Fargo. No?
You know, you're not giving us a lot of good news, buddy. But you're so good at what you do.
Thank you.
We'll accept it at face value. It is closing in on winter, like in a month.
I know.
All right. Thank you very, very much for great move. Now, he mentioned Florida, where it's getting cold. Well, it's getting legally chilly there right now. Senator Bill Nelson now adding to his lawsuit flurry here, this time challenging Palm Beach County for stopping the machine voting. They've obviously progressed now onto a hand count of ballots. That's going to be statewide. The bottom line, though, is this is going to be a mess, certainly before 2020. And in fact, growing concerns it's not going to be fixed by 2020. Democratic strategist Jessica Tarlov, National Review's Kat Timpf, and Axios' Caitlin Owens. Caitlin, end it with you. Your thoughts on what's happening in Florida now, because any lawsuit could potentially delay this process. But what do you think?
As you said, it is a mess, Neil. You know, we're seeing it's practically very messy in a logistical sense, and it's also a mess of politics and lawsuits flying back and forth. It's gotten really nasty. We're seeing the president make allegations, unsubstantiated allegations about voter fraud. It doesn't seem like...
Where did he get that, by the way? I mean, people who are changing or putting a hat on and then coming to vote again. It's crazy stuff. Where did he get it?
You know, Neil, I actually searched for that today, and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm not sure. Your guess is as good as mine. But, you know, I think this is going to keep going until it seems Bill Nelson has said he will keep going until there's no other legal means for him to keep fighting. So we're in for a long one here.
We could be way beyond even the 20th when the state is supposed to certify everything. But, Kat, one of the things that has come up in this process is that what ballots they have counted have actually tipped in the Republican candidate's favor, particularly in that senatorial race with Rick Scott. And I think the Nelson people were hoping they won that, Broward County, for example, Palm Beach County, by overwhelming numbers. But they were hoping they'd certainly pick up votes there, and they didn't. What are we to glean from that?
Well, that's certainly obviously what they were hoping, and not the case. Republicans are going to win on this issue. But I just think the bigger focus needs to be we need to make sure there isn't the same mess in 2020 as there is here. There's problems.
I bet there will be.
I bet there will be, too. There's
and
problems.
And in a state that's so close, it's guaranteed to get exacerbated.
That's the issue. There's problems in lots of states. Here in New York, there's problems with wet ballots and those kinds of things. But we know New York's going to go blue, so it's not as big of an issue. When it happens in Florida, it's this big national story. They have issues with, for example, old machines causing problems. They shouldn't have old machines when they know that there could potentially be an issue coming up like this, and they'll need to have to deal with it in a timely manner.
What do you think of this in the back and forth? I mean, let's say Scott wins legitimately, still it's a close vote, that DeSantis wins legitimately, still a close vote. But is there going to be an asterisk then next to the winner's name forever till the end of time?
I'm not completely sure. I think whatever happens in Georgia, there's going to be an asterisk there. The case that Stacey Abrams and her people are making against Brian Kemp, which is more reliant on voter fraud, voter disenfranchisement and voter repression throughout the early voting period and on election day, is a lot stronger than what's going on here.
That some couldn't vote.
That some couldn't vote, and you had 4-hour lines, which if you're a working person, I don't know who can just take the entire day off to wait in a line, and machines without power cords.
And that was deliberate on his part to squelch voting for her?
Well, there were No. Well, that's the accusation that he has. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of people removed from the voter rolls in Georgia over the course of Brian Kemp's tenure there. So that's the accusation there. I think in terms of the asterisks, as long as these lawsuits are filed and it goes the distance and they give them the amount of days that it takes to satisfy what Mark Elias, who is Bill Nelson's lawyer, is asking for, I think there will always be people who say it has an asterisk. But generally speaking, I mean, Florida does elect Republicans, and by slim margins, and this happens there all the time.
So this kind of stuff gets punctuated by
of course,
the very nature of a close
race. But we were talking about this on Saturday morning. The idea that that ballot is designed in such a way that Bill Nelson could have lost out on up to 3% of his vote because of name placement is so ludicrous. That has to be changed by 2020. And I don't know why Election Day isn't a national holiday.
Although a very similar ballot was in other regions where there wasn't nearly the confusion. So who knows? Who knows?
A lot of this is who knows, but the voter fraud claim that the president is making, which is completely conspiratorial,
that
Rick Scott has picked
and by the way,
well.
the charge that you're intimating that the Florida winner, apparent winner, or the Georgia winner was doing something Machiavellian, it's a little bit of a stretch.
No, I'm saying that will be...
It will be debated, but... You know.
No, that will be the narrative more so than it will be in Florida, was my point. I'm not calling anyone anything.
If he gets under 50%, and then, of course, have a whole new
Well, they're
election.
both declaring victory, so maybe we'll have two governors, one from each party.
One at a time. Caitlin, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the blue wave thing. When I look at the numbers, I guess it's 38 seats now picked up in the House.
I think by tomorrow
it should be. And then I look at what's happening in the Senate, where it could closely mirror the old Senate, which is good. Republicans still maintain their lead. Is that a blue wave to you?
You know, I think what is a blue wave? It kind of is a philosophical question. But yeah, I mean, if you look at where we were at this point 2 years ago, right after Donald Trump won the presidency, you know, Democrats were looking at the Senate map in particular, just kind of with dread. There were 10 seats that Democrats had. Right. And so, you know, it could have been a lot worse than it was.
Okay.
So do you count that as a blue wave?
Or how do you seize it up?
It was like half a wave, you know, like you couldn't really surf on it, but you could maybe play in it and get knocked over a little bit.
I feel like you could stand up for a second and then you'd fall back down. It was pretty good. I mean, 7 governorships.
I don't think you can deny it's a blue wave. You know, I know I get people.
I'm with Neil.
It's a blue wave.
Even though you called me Machiavellian.
I think it's a small wave.
Small blue wave, but a blue wave nonetheless.
I had fun in the ocean.
Here come the friends. Here comes the